mix of analysis and deep discussion to foster productive disagreement amongst participants. I must appreciate the learning opportunities for students, industry, and faculty a case study provides. The first case study came out in early 1900 by any university. It was a one-page, well-written piece of art which described a problem and provided opportunity to challenge one another to revise and rethink the solution. Hi everyone, this is Fawad.
And I'm Sajda Qureshi, and we welcome you to the most exciting live show Qtrix, which is brought to you by ILMA University in collaboration with Rotary International District 3271 and powered by Noman Group of Companies. Qtrix aims to bring top-notch celebrities from academia and industry in front to speak out hot-button issues related to quality trends and new directions in a post-COVID-19 digitech world. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of today's show is the shoes of protagonists, teaching and learning through case studies. To discuss the importance of putting the future leaders into the shoes of managers, we have with us today Carin-Isabel, who is the Executive Director, Case Study and Writing Group, Harvard Business School, and is passionate about encouraging human sustainability and equal access at work. Before starting a conversation with her, let's watch her short profile.
Their small businesses shut down and they are unemployed. Some of them have had savings, but they are underserved because they are looking for
Carin-Isabel Knoop is the Executive Director of the Harvard Business School Case Research and Writing Group. She's written cases on managers and leaders all over the world across functions and industries for decades. Carin co-authored the book, Compassionate Management of Mental Health in the Modern Workplace, with Dean John Quelch, Herbert Business School, University of Miami, and her articles have been published in Africa, Europe, the US, and Latin America. She champions diversity of thought, adaptability, and human sustainability at work while working closely with public and private organizations, student groups, and employee benefits organizations to promote mental health by all and for all. She has an undergraduate degree from the University of Texas and an MBA from the Harvard Business School, HBS. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Carin-Isabel Knoop.
Wow, I've never had a rock star welcome before. This is awesome. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
Carin, thank you for joining us today. And
it's an honor
to have you on board. And
yes.
We hope that today's show is gonna rock.
Hey Carin, how are you?
So I'm not a celebrity though. I'm very much of a behind-the-scenes person, but it's great to be here. I'll recover.
But this show is gonna make you a celebrity and tell the world that you are none other than a celebrity.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
So should we start, Carin?
Of course.
All right. Going with my very first question of the show is, how did you create your role in Harvard Business School?
So it came, like many great things in life, rather coincidentally. So I came to business school also a little bit randomly, and really liked it a great deal. So a couple of faculty members suggested that I stay to do a PhD. And I thought, if I stay, why don't I test and see what it's like? So I started out as a research associate, which is the role that supports faculty on an individual basis with course development, and decided PhD was not for me, but I really liked it and some opportunities developed that we started our team. And the idea was, instead of being a dedicated RA, working one-on-one with a faculty member, we could set up a little group that was more like a professional service firm that people could come to when they needed help on projects. And so that's what we started, I think now in 1997. So we just celebrated 25 years. And now we're about 19 members strong and touch about a third of the school's cases.
All right. A very perfect journey, by the way. So the second question is, the first case study used at Harvard Business School was like Journal Shoes Company, and you are celebrating its 100th anniversary. Mm-hmm. How this journey started at Harvard?
How did the case?
How this journey started, as you are celebrating that 100th anniversary and you are celebrating this case study. your first case study?
Yes. So the original case method, I believe, came from law, which is, in the U.S. very precedent-based. So a situation occurs, and the class has to debate the situation and also learn from the precedent of the situation. So when the Harvard Business School was established, after years, the very forward-looking faculty thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we had a method that allowed participants not just to stand in class and passively receive knowledge, but jointly create the knowledge. And so they said, why don't we try to teach by the case method or by an example and build empathy for business decisions by creating the cases. And so the general shoe case is really a marvel because it's 1 page long. It's the story of workers who stop working a little bit before their shift, and the managers have to figure out what's going on. And so all of us who are general managers or write about managers know that there's always a lot of things going on. Some of them you'll think about and some of them you will not. So since 1921, we've been teaching by the case method more and more and developed classrooms that are set up to foster conversations. So we have these atrium type classrooms. And so for the past year, the school has been very involved in getting faculty, publishing, staff, students, alumni involved in sort of getting to know the case method all over again. And actually the Senior Associate Dean and Head of the MBA program, Jan Rifkin, taught the general shoe case to us last week at the big celebration on the 30th of March. And we had a very, very vibrant conversation about this topic as if it were today. So it's really very, very marvelous. It's been a lot of fun. And there are great websites and things that I'll share with the audience if they would like to learn more about the history of the cases and also the major milestones. It'd be a pleasure.
Now, Carin, actually, at Harvard Business School, because your university is pioneer in creating case studies and explaining that to students. So, what exactly is the step-by-step process of developing a case study at Harvard Business School? How does it all start with the students?
So it all starts with the faculty, of course, and it starts with the faculty's conception of what they would like to teach in the classroom. So it's very important to remember that cases are a teaching tool, and cases are just one part of the case method. So it is what people read, but case method teaching is based on people preparing individually. Students come together, prepare as a group, as a small group, like 6 to 8, a study group, and then they come together in class with the faculty, have this facilitated conversation, and then there's a reflection after about the learning. So the case is just one part of this sort of method. So the faculty usually have an idea for what they need for a course or a concept that they're really interested in. Or it may be that they're teaching a course and there's a case that is a little bit old or doesn't quite work anymore, so they're looking for a replacement. So they scan the world, they scan their contacts. Our team also has a Case Please newsletter that brings together leads together. And they say, for example, years ago, I wrote a case on Hub in Pakistan. And so the faculty thought, oh, that would be a great case to talk about the complexities of energy delivery and the economics of energy delivery. So we traveled, we do the interviews with managers, and then you also do some secondary research. So what's in the documentation, what has the World Bank written about Pakistan, what is written about energy prices, and then you put together a first draft. As a research associate, you send it to the faculty revises it, you iterate a fair bit, and then if it's a field cases involved going interviewing. If you're writing a library case, you're just writing from the bench, so to speak. If you go to interview, and if we work with companies, then they have the opportunity to look at the case again and also have to sign a release form so that we can use it. So we cannot use a case until the company has cleared it for use. So it's really a partnership with the company. And our hope is always that the company learns from the process. Sometimes it's interesting to have people come into our lives and ask us why we do things a certain way. And so for managers, it's an opportunity to reflect on decisions made and talk to faculty members and interact. And then when you come to class, you have, a community of 90 students who read the case, are very eager to debate the case. So hopefully when guests come from company, they learn something. So it's a long cycle. It's a long process, but it's also a bit of a cycle.
So, Carin, usually how much time is taken by the faculty to develop a case study? Generally, what is the time frame? Because it's a long process.
A long time. So cases take a lot of hours to write. These hours can be very compressed over several weeks, and sometimes cases take a longer time to write. So, for example, one of my cases, we had to do an interview at headquarters, and then we wanted to go visit some regional offices. So we went to see the regional offices. And then when we wrote the case, the management changed. So that delayed things. So some cases might take a year to get finished. But on the average, I think we probably aim for 3 months from beginning to end. 3 to 6 months feels like a good number.
Okay. And while adopting this case study, so students and alumni are also part of that team that is working on the case study with the faculty members?
So alumni are often very, very generous with their time and their stories, so they wind up being protagonists. They're also very good protagonists because they know the case methods, so they know that tension is required and they know that data is necessary. There's always a lot of explaining about what this is. It's 11 pages. In 11 pages, you have to make editorial choices, and it has to have tension for there to be a conversation. So, we don't go in writing a public relations piece, nor do we go in as investigative journalists trying to create trouble. We're really creating a tool. So alumni understand that. So that is one way that they participate. Students are sometimes involved in case writing and sometimes involved in sourcing ideas. But for the most part, faculty writes the cases, and sometimes they get the support of research associates or doctoral students. And they also work with other faculty members at other schools, usually business schools.
And once the case study is prepared and finalized and approved by your school, then the case study is being put forward into the classroom and given to the students so that they can be divided into focus groups and they can argue on the case study, right? This is the process that is followed after that?
Right. So when a case gets finished, it goes to a group that does the legal read and the compliance, because it is a piece of material. It mentions human beings, and so we want to make sure that it's written as well as possible, that it fits all the rules. If there's data, you're going to need to file permissions form. So it is a publishing operation. So there is a formal review. Then the case will get taught in class. It cannot be sold until this review has been done. So it stays inside at first. It gets taught in class. Sometimes a revision is needed. We really try not to have typos, but anybody who writes for a living knows that sometimes you miss things and it's a heartache, and or something might not quite work in a case. So it gets pulled, it gets revised. Once we're sure that it's to the level of quality that we want and it has had all its legal reviews, then it will be sold on publishing's website. And there it can go out into the world. At HBS, the process is that if a case is assigned to me as a student, I will get the case, sometimes with assignment questions. I'm going to read it, make up my mind, answer the questions, decide whether or not, we should be investing in this kind of energy, for example. I'll make my analysis, and then I'll come together with my study group, which is the night before or a few days before class. And there you can have a conversation with a tighter sort of group of people. Hopefully they come from different environments. So you might have somebody who knows about energy. You might have somebody who knows about finance. So you will learn from your peers. So that's the first unit. The first unit of learning is myself. The second is the study group. And then you come into the bigger group, which is 80 to 90 people. And then that big conversation occurs.
Oh, very interesting. So the next question is, what are the callouts and hypotheticals in case study?
What are the challenges?
What are the call outs and hypotheticals in case studies?
So nothing is ever sure. So there are some cases that are written to describe something that was extremely well done. They're called best practices cases. But, for the most part, cases are done precisely to sort of enable people to call out all the hypotheticals of a situation. So let's say I want to invest in a particular country. What should I be looking at? What could possibly be happening? From whom could I know it? What assumptions am I making about the business environment? What assumptions am I making about me as a leader and my ability to sort of execute on that deal? What assumptions am I making about potential partners? What do I need to know in order to hedge my risks? What are 5 other ways that I could go about, developing my business? So a case is full of, it's like a decision tree. There are options open other options. And I think good case method participants are able to generate a lot of these options in their minds. So to be very open-minded about possibilities, but then quite disciplined about narrowing these possibilities down based on analysis and some self-awareness also. And then you have to go into class and argue for your point of view. So you have to explain, why is this my hypothesis about what is happening in this case? And hopefully somebody will have a completely different hypothesis. And they will say, oh, wow, I actually never thought of it this way. Let me change my mind. And let me now suggest that we do this. So you see, again, this sort of, here are my assumptions, this is what others are sort of hypothesizing, and then what happens in the bigger classroom. And then at the end, sometimes the faculty member does a wrap up to say, we wrote this case was to illustrate this phenomenon. These are all the things that could be happening here. This is actually what happened. And these are the lessons learned.
So Karen, what is the exactly hairline difference between writing a research paper and writing a case study? So what is the difference? Because in a case study, after writing the case study, then it needs to be deployed to the students or focus group so that they can study that and argue that and give a solution for their problem. So what is the basically difference, actual difference between writing a case study and a research paper? Because they both the models uses hypothesis and both the models use perform different tests to reach to the conclusion.
So a case comes from the learning backwards, whereas I think research comes from data forwards. So a case is at the end of the day in a classroom. So there are big boards in a lot of case classrooms. They're broken in 3 at HBS. A faculty will say there's going to be 3 pastures. It's a term that faculty use, 3 big topics of conversation. So at the end of class, I would like, let's say it's an entrepreneurial finance class. Here are the people involved. This is the nature of the opportunity that we're discussing. And on the 3rd board, you'd have, here's the deal and how we're going to structure it, depending on the people and the opportunity in order to get what we want. So in the class, you're going to go backwards from what you want on those boards and what you want the takeaways to what it is that you need to write in the case and to what you need to ask in class. In a research paper, I'm going to think about, what are the ideal, what is an ideal team to launch a startup. Then I will do research on what teams have done before. I will do research on startups. I will interview VCs. I will interview startup founders. I'll interview people who left toxic startup founders. So all that base of research will be in my paper, and I will present the statements to my reader as facts. And I will not be asking my readers, what do you think? What would you do? What kind of startup founder are you? Whereas the case does that. So the way that I apologize, but your question brought up something else, which is very important, is that, faculty at HBS use cases as a way to refine, test, and augment their personal research. So I have a hypothesis about the way the world works. Then I'm going to go into a startup and sort of find a startup to illustrate this phenomenon that I see. And it may be that I find exactly what I predicted from my research. And it may be that it's slightly different. So I'll write the case, and from that I'll learn. So I'll go back to my paper writing, and maybe I'll write a different paper. From that different paper, I might have an idea for another type of case that I should include in my class or in the curriculum. So this virtual circle also is very, very powerful between research and case writing. And of course, the faculty also do a lot of empirical research, so computing-based research and also behavioral research. So they all fit together. But a case is really a teaching tool. It's a conversational tool. It's an inquiry. From inquiry to action is actually how Jan Rifkin, the professor that I mentioned earlier, who taught the General Shoe Company, called it, and it is the name of an exhibit at Baker Library. I'll send you the link for the audience to go visit.
So that means the protagonism is the hairline difference between case study and writing a research paper. Because while working on the research paper, you get into the shoes of an earlier manager and how did he or she conceive through the situation. And on the basis of that, you give your idea. If you are into that situation, what would be your decision, or how would you deal with that situation? So this is the main difference. But for that, for preparing case studies, you need to have research background, and you need to have a knowledge of research tools and methodologies, so that you can use those tools in drafting your case study and while working on that case study, right?
Right. Everything is quite connected at HBS, which is, the only world, my world is narrow. It's the only world that I can speak of. I would say that the big difference is not necessarily a protagonist, because there are some cases that do not have protagonists, but it is an issue or a topic where there's tension, where reasonable people with the same amount of information could have different points of opinion. For the most part, when I read a research paper, I'm reading your research, your conclusions. I may or may not agree with them, but my first instinct is not to want to disagree with you. My first instinct is to read and absorb and, maybe make a different opinion. When I read a case, usually by the time I'm done, I'm like, this would be an option and that would be an option. So it's very much a tool that generates options. Versus, I think, a research paper in some ways is a tool that limits options, because of all the possible things that could be happening, of all the possible things that could make a deal great. To come back to my entrepreneurial finance example, the ability for founders to properly have conflicts is huge. The ability for founders to have had industry experience might be important. So I'm going to narrow down 3 things that are fundamental, whereas in a case, I'm going to give the 2 of you the opportunity to consider 5 or 6 different things. So I think the funnel is this way. I think in cases, in research, it goes a little bit more narrow. But I am not an academic, so this is from my vantage point as a case writer.
And I'm thinking from your statement, Carin, that post COVID-19, after COVID-19 situation, generally the situations on which case studies are being developed, they must have a missing of that shoes of a protagonist, because the situation that we are in after this COVID-19, there was no history of such situation. So what are the difficulties that were faced by the case study makers, because there were no history or related literature on the situations?
So this is fascinating. So we've had stories. I mean, we had SARS in 2003 in Hong Kong. Certainly, there have been pandemics before. I think there have been shocks. There have been economic shocks, financial shocks, all of that. I think the tricky thing about writing about COVID was not necessarily that there wasn't a past, but that it was so present. And so, you write the 5 times the same paragraph about, it's a virus, we all went in lockdown. So the question is, to what extent is a case too contemporary is a real area of tension. So when faculty members pick a case situation, two things have to be true for it to be a really successful case, from what I've seen faculty say. The first one is that the situation itself has to be uniquely compelling and interesting. And it has to have universal applicability. So I can write about a small barbecue restaurant in Texas. It could be uniquely interesting because it's a place that decided to pay its people, $20 an hour, 15 years ago, or something crazy. But the principles that they have used have to be universally applicable so that everybody who does this case learns from it. One big problem with COVID-focused cases is that in 5 years, it might be difficult to teach them because the world will have changed again. So cases evolve with time and reflect their time, but they also have to be timeless. So think back to the beginning of our conversation, the General Shoe Company. We still teach a case of 1942 that works. So if you write cases that are too modern, they don't age well. And they have to sustain the test of time, which is also why cases are written in the past tense, in order to sort of indicate that they're not set in a particular present. So it's an excellent question, very much of attention in case writing.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, Carin, as Socratic discourse is one mode of learning in case-based classes, how about case-based learning talk about mental health in classrooms? How does it affect?
So I think mental health is central to the human condition. So wherever there are humans, there are differences, and so I think the business schools and business classrooms have been very hesitant to talk, like society, even before COVID. Now we're talking about this much, but there's still a lot of stigma around mental health issues, and might impact how business is done, how people decide, how productive humans might be. So I think for the most part, business schools and case studies tend to present humans as quite robotic. So, my protagonist is making a decision. I do not know who she is. I do not know what pressure she's under. And so she's operating as if she were always perfectly healthy every day. And none of us are perfectly healthy every day. So there's a lot of assumption about how humans operate in cases that I think is not true. But in part because the cases are also about business issues. So I think more and more post-COVID, there's a conversation, or we're starting at HBS about, how do you teach about these issues? And we're seeing several faculty members starting to develop cases that talk specifically about employee engagement, toxic leadership, mental health apps, which are a huge business. So it's not only a topic, but it's also a huge business. Telehealth and all of that. So the conversation is starting, but it's been, I think, very, very slow in coming, given how central this is to business. This is about people.
And how about how students reach to the solution of the problem that is presented in the case studies, along with their, the mental health? How they come up with the solution?
For cases that are related to mental health, or
the general cases that you provide to the students in the classrooms.
So I think anybody who's a participant, anybody who's a student, comes with their own lived history of how they've dealt with problems before, assumptions that they've made. So, for example, let's say we're doing a case on a company's in trouble and we have to lay people off. My parent might have been laid off and had a very difficult time, or the reason why I wrote my book on compassionate management is that a classmate of mine took his life after being laid off, a school friend, and I thought, how can this be? And then I started to do research about the extent of the impact of a toxic workplace on mental health outcomes. So I might come to a case conversation like that and say, is there a way we can avoid layoff? Because layoffs are difficult, especially for, people who don't have family or support. And, maybe you too have had parents or friends who were laid off, and then it was a blessing in disguise because they found a great job.
True.
We are all going to be bringing that lived history to the classroom. That will be part of the beauty. It may be that we do a case on employee engagement, and I might have read a little bit more about mental health, and I'm able to share in the class what I think might be going on here. And you may be coming from a completely different background and say, Carin, you're being too compassionate. These people are just being lazy. This is what's happening here. It's not that the manager is failing. So I think we bring our humanity to the class conversation that way. I'm hoping question.
Yes, I'm clear. Okay, the next question is like, what does the empirical content covers in the case studies? Like, does the faculty needs to be industry expert?
So some cases are about industry, some cases, are just about a phenomenon, or for the most, faculty at HVS are absolutely brilliant. And so most of them know business intimately. They're more familiar with their own area of research. Of course, they belong in a unit. So, somebody who's in accounting and management might not know everything about nuclear energy, but should be able to learn enough about the big trends, the big dynamics in nuclear energy delivery to be able to write a case about it. The people we interview are experts. So, you will rely on learning from them. And because the page count is limited, it's 11 pages, the extent of detail that you can have about a particular industry is also limited. So let's say you write a case about healthcare in the US. You could write, 10,000 pages about the complexity of healthcare in the US. Basically, you need to know these 5 big things, and in order to put them in the case so that the students can have it also.
Perfect.
So most faculty are specialized by area of research, not by industry. So it's accounting, management, organizational behavior.
Okay. And how about the process of case study? Does it help the students to develop empathy, and that is being authentic to value and principles while appreciating and welcoming other people's opinion? How do you see this?
I certainly hope so. I mean, that is the reason why I love it so much, which is, I think you come into a classroom with very, very bright people, and we'll have different opinions. And if you're not somehow humbled by that, if you are not attracted by the possibility of what joint discovery can bring, then I think, we've done something wrong in the classroom. I think that the ability to understand that you might have a very different view of layoffs than I do, maybe because you've had a very traumatic experience, should lead me to think about, there's another way to look at this. So empathy in some ways is, trying to sort of step into someone else's shoes. You can never really do that because I have no idea who you are. But I can also a person whose friend would have killed himself after a layoff, that could be really traumatic. Let me maybe think about next time I'm in business in a situation of layoff to make sure that we have outplacement services, to make sure there's counseling services for those people laid off. So I think done well is a method that enables people to confront some of their assumptions, learn from others, and develop new points of view. So I hope
that as like you have the students, obviously the students must be from very much diversified backgrounds. So they give you, a big horizon, like a biggest food for thought for that. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're encouraged to do that. The method encourages participation. And you really work very hard to get all the voices heard.
Carin, I'm also asking the questions that Fawad was about to ask, and he has a bit of connectivity problem. So if you allow me, I can carry on with his questions as well.
Yes. I was like, I hope I haven't offended him.
Can you hear him now? If you can ask.
She can't hear me.
She must, because I have mic at
I can hear you.
She can hear you. you can carry on from there. This question, yeah, you can continue from there.
Sorry, Karen, I actually, the speaker is not working properly. So
I can hear
my
you.
question
I
is,
can hear
how
you very
does
well.
one manage when host organizations refuses to provide data, which is prerequisite for case writing? Because this is the general issue with not every company is cooperating in drafting the case study. So how does this situation is being tackled by the faculty members?
So hopefully we never get there. So, you know, the secret to a lot of happiness in life is proper contracting and setting the right expectations. So before faculty engage with the host organization, there is a very honest conversation about what a case is. We also have a brochure that describes it. And you will have a conversation and say, you know, this is what I would like to write about. This is the type of data that I would like the students to do analysis on because I'm teaching them this model. You will have control at the end, but the case is about attention. So, you know, are you okay with those tensions? So hopefully we're never in a situation where the faculty has built a case around a set of data or information that then the company is uncomfortable releasing. So, you know, company representatives are people too. So I may tell you, of course, you can come and write a case on my family. You can interview everyone, and then you get your case draft and you say, you know, Karen is a terrible mother and she never does the dishes. And so then you may be like, oh, do we really have to leave this sentence in about my not doing the dishes? So the faculty, you know, the faculty and the company are then in conversation to say, okay, we can take the part about doing the dishes out, but we need the part about your parenting because, you know, it's very reflective of your management. It's central to my case teaching. So when we write about sites, you know, we're building relationships with managers. You know, we never want to do any harm. We want to learn from them. We want to learn from their difficulties so that others can. And I still stay in touch with protagonists years later. They send me ideas. When I read an article that may be of interest to them, I send it to them. So it is very much of a partnership. And like every good partnership, you want to make sure that you engage, you know, with your cards on the table at the beginning. And I think HBS faculty are very, very careful to do that. Now, you know, I've written cases before, helped faculty write cases before where companies get acquired. Then then the case dies, right? Because that is data that cannot be released anymore if you're in the quiet period or if it gets acquired. So things do happen in the process, but for the most part, the right conversations occur at the right moment because you don't want heartache. The other thing is that when you think about this, you know, we're taking companies' time. Nothing is more precious than our time. So the last thing we want to do is write a case on a company that then doesn't get released. Because you've wasted you know, that is a real heartache. So we do our very, very best to avoid that.
And actually, the recent technology has made the content of case study more engaging, I guess, because now you have the visual facilities, audio facilities, you can show the pictures, you can show the graphs and different diagrams. So I guess if we move back to 100 years ago, reading through one piece of paper, and in the current scenario now moving with the technology-based case study, I think this has created more impact. What do you say about that? I think this is more engaging nowadays.
Mm-hmm. So you'll see when I send you the website with the milestones of case development that we've been using, you know, media and video for 25 years. So I think the first multimedia case was 1994, 1995. It was on CD. You know, the distribution was, of course, very different. But HBS faculty have always been interested in how you use technology in cases, and we're doing more and more of these types of media-supported, media-enhanced cases. But for the most part, most cases are still written documents. So we're now in the process of HBS is undergoing digital transformation, like many organizations. And so a lot of the possibilities that you're raising and questions that you pose are very much top of mind now with the faculty and school leaders around how do we author, how do we publish, and should that change?
All right.
The content itself will never change. It has to be participant-centered, but could we be using different platforms, different visuals, different points of access?
All right. So, Karen, that was really good to hear you. Should we move towards a rapid fire round where I have a very quick questions and you will be answering those questions, and that is the fun part of our show. Should we start it?
What? I thought the case was the fun part.
All right. Okay, Karen, what is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
It sounds really stupid, but I think I'm just happy to wake up. I think I'm to be in a comfy bed, right? The first thing I wake up and say, "Oh, this morning." Then I had to wake up super early for you.
Okay. And which book are you reading these days?
I don't read books.
Oh, really?
No, I read all day with my work. I don't read on my own. I read magazines, but I don't read books.
All right. The last good TV show you watched?
Oh, I don't watch much TV either. The one that I do like is House, which is an old show about a cranky doctor.
Okay. Okay. In which subject you were worst at school?
Philosophy.
Philosophy, right. The most
I got to be, even though now in my old age, I'm turning back to the philosophers. And I think like in COVID, like a lot of people to make sense of the world, but I just couldn't get it. I'm too literal.
That happens really. Whatever you hate the most, that, the life, the environment brings you back. And you get to get expert in that thing that you hated the most when you were, the youngest.
Really?
Right?
Okay, maybe. Well, yeah, we'll see. I'm not sure that I'm an expert, but I should find my old philosophy teacher and see.
All right. The most influential person in your life?
The most influential person in my life.
Or maybe your mentor.
I think my friend who died. I think he really had a very, very deep influence in my life.
Okay. If you got a do-over in your life, what would that be?
Oh, these questions, I don't really think in terms of regrets. What would I do? Maybe I would have done a PhD at HBS. Maybe I should have stayed.
All right. What is your biggest strength?
My biggest?
Strength.
Friend.
Strength, the power.
Oh, my biggest strength.
Yeah.
I think I'm fairly, I don't know, maybe I can, oh, it sounds so arrogant, but I can be funny.
Right.
I like to laugh. Let me put it that way. That's probably a better strength.
We have observed that as well. Right. Your favorite color to wear?
Black. To make an effort today, I put some colors on for you guys, but they're the little case owls. See, they're all different.
We saw that black too. Okay. One destination you would wish to travel?
One?
That you have not. One destination that you would love to travel that you have not visited?
ILMA University, of course.
Oh, perfect. So next time we'll see you.
Yes, when COVID is over, I'll come visit.
Yeah. When were you the happiest one?
I'm a pretty happy person. I think I was the happiest the day my daughter was born.
Oh, your favorite childhood memory?
Walking on the beach with my father. I grew up in Abidjan in West Africa, and I'm a rat, and we would walk up and down the beach for hours together.
Oh, that's cute.
That is also a source of meditation, so that it makes you more energized.
I do like to walk. It is my Zen place. I make sense of my world that way.
Kevin, describe yourselves in just 5 words.
So yesterday I actually looked up the words. I was with a friend who's very skeptical about zodiac signs, and I told him that I'm a straight up Sagittarius. So those are in my mind. So our traits is that we're honest, which can be a little bit harsh. We can be impulsive, can be judgmental, but we're very loyal for the most part and good-natured. And I think those probably apply. I can be quite harsh. And this may be why I'm also a good case writer, because I see things in many different ways.
Perfect. So here we end with the fun part of the show. Over to you, Fawad.
Karen, what message would you like to give to our faculty members, students, especially the women out there who wish to reach to such high positions as you are right now? So, what message would you like to give to them?
So I'm not in a very high position. I'm just a person, I think, who made an odd set of choices, and then at some point I said to the school we could organize things differently, and we did. And so I think a message is, you know, speak up when you see an opportunity, if you can. And I understand that there are, you know, very different contexts in which this is done. I mean, my heart goes out to everyone. In academia, it's been so difficult. It's been difficult for students. It's been difficult for teachers. You know, learning remote is extremely difficult on students' ability to relate to each other and mental health. So my message is not very inspirational, but it's really hang in there, be there for each other, you know, support each other, be patient. We've all made mistakes in the pandemic. We're grouchier than we used to be. We're more irritable. We're impatient. Our attention spans have gone down. It's part of the pressure. So I think hang in there, be sweet and supportive to each other. Think of alternative options and vocalize them would probably be my recommendation. It's not super inspirational, but it comes from my heart.
That's great.
And if anybody has any questions about the case method, either as a student or a faculty member, our team is very happy to help. So please do reach out to us. We also have a page on LinkedIn that we just set up to try to put some resources there for fellow case writers and case teachers.
That's great. That's great. See, it's very humble of you, because the work that you are doing and the way you are handling this department and the school and in managing and developing the case studies, hats off to you and your team. It's a difficult task,
it's a wonderful team.
It requires day and night working, day and night research, day and night movement, traveling. So it's not easy. We understand. And best of luck for that.
Thank you.
And Karen, it was really nice having you on the show. What do you feel about the Qtrix show? What is your feedback about the show? Because it was not a convention show. It was a show that had just the conversation, no presentations, no slides, no teaching. It was only the discussion. So, what is your feedback about the show?
So to me, that's my favorite way to interact, because, you know, we can have a conversation. I mean, I would have liked to ask you questions. I would have liked to hear more from you, of course. But the questions that you asked, you know, helped me think about my work. So the same phenomenon that we talked about in the classroom, I could feel. So I feel that I grew from being asked. I felt that I grew from our conversation. And, you know, this notion of things that we dislike then wind up being the things that maybe, you know, we come back to later in life. I'll think about it and think about a little bit more. The rapid fire, I think, are very fun, a very fun addition. So I liked it a lot. And, you know, I mean, from the content standpoint, I really like the fact that you're interested in, you know, applying a method from academia and thinking about how to apply it to other industries. You know, I just wrote about what we can learn from engineering in order to manage stress at work. And I think this is how learning is occurring, is across disciplines, across geographies, across cultures, across religions. And the more these conversations we can have, the better off we are. So I'm flattered that you had me on. I'm honored about your interest and touched by the words for my team, and I'll pass them along. So thank you.
Thank you. And well, it's time to wrap up the show. Karen, on behalf of Board of Governors of ILMA University, our Chancellor, Mr. Numan Lakhani, our Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and on behalf of myself and Sarja, the moderator, thank you so much for joining us on the show and giving us your time. And we understand that today's show would help people to set a landmark to initiate their journey towards case study. People, because generally in developing countries, case studies are not being focused so much, and generally the case studies that are being used by our universities are generally prepared by other faculty members. So this show would lead and help them to initiate their efforts towards preparing and developing case studies, so that because the demographics are different. In if you are sitting in Pakistan, so Pakistani demographics are different. So sometimes using case studies of other countries might not give 100% result to the students because their demographics are different.
Of course.
So importance has to be given in initiating and drafting case studies in the country of residence where the universities are there. So I think this would help the faculty to rethink and start working on case studies. And I think the work that your university and your department is doing, and the team that is working on case studies, needs huge round of applause from the developing countries like us. And we hope we'll be managing a few more shows or maybe specific workshops on how to develop case studies on part of faculty members and how students can get most out of those case studies. So we'll be interacting with you soon for working on an advanced stage as far as the case studies are concerned. Ladies and gentlemen,